Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Japanese Shabaru podcast. We're gonna start things off with Dandadan, episode 15. So, pretty much we have where it left off of with Okarun and Deeble about to square off. They're really great animations, just seeing them kick kick the spirit ball back and forth, and eventually Okarun does get the upper hand in the early scrap. And man, I cannot stress enough how well animated these sequences, this entire episode is. It's probably like the best one so far. But yeah, Okarun decides to like go with Momo and get her to safety, and pretty much tries to come up with a plan of how to get them all out of there. So he and Momo go, and he decides to launch her up to escape from the pit, the basement that they're at, because apparently the death worm or earthworm now finally is like leaking out poison. So if they both stayed, they would have both been done in by it. So Momo Momo kind of doesn't want to leave Okarun behind, but Okarun's like, no, you have to do this, and then you can come back for us later. And in the meanwhile, he was gonna find a way to deal with Gigi and the evil eye, and they have this like really cute scene of them holding hands. I love how the anime kind of really emphasized how much care uh, Momo has for Okarun at this point, and it really made it seem like if she was a little more than just caring. At least the way the they animated the sequence of her holding his hand. But yeah, we have Momo, and she gets launched up, and then she has to catapult herself with her own psychic powers up, and she decides to find a way to get Okarun and Gigi out of there. And one of the best ways was to get rid of the earthworm first and foremost. So the one way she decided, okay, how am I gonna get this earthworm out of the basement? So she decides to light up the house on fire. That way the firefighters will come in and bring their hoses, and maybe she can pour water down and either fill it up or have the earthworm escape due to the fire. One of those two things was bound to happen. So then we have the continuation of Okarun versus the evil eye. Ugh. Once again, great seeing Okarun at full display. You're seeing his ability to like avoid and go after the evil eye. It's really interesting because we have Okarun, who hasn't really have had an actual proper fight with a person, and so we don't really see him do a lot of like punches or a lot of kickings, but avoiding and trying to talk to Gigi, even though the evil eye was there. And it seemed like a lot of the evil eye was really having a lot of fun, because Okarun wasn't just a nobody or like somebody weak. He was actually putting up a decent showing for it. And eventually the evil eye notices that Gigi's body is starting to bleed, so it comes to realize also that the earthworm was releasing some toxins that Gigi's body was not going to be able to handle for very long. And it's pretty much afterwards he decides to trap Okarun in this cursed house, which is really interesting because, as you know, the evil eye's like whole backstory is that he was always caged in and made to be left alone. So, and it was something he couldn't escape from. So like the evil eye trapping Okarun is kind of like trying to show Okarun like, yeah, this anything awaiting in this house is only going to be hell. And it's awesome seeing him just like walk in, and Okarun trying to like avoid but not being able to avoid the punch. So you have the evil eye just wailing at Okarun, telling him like, yeah, after I'm done with you, I'm gonna go after Momo. And that was the one thing that kind of like woke Okarun up, where this is like really awesome scene where he just like grabs him and looks down on him, and it's like, oh, he's like, you're really pissing me off. It's like, and then he starts like telling people like how there's three mistakes that he made, and then he starts naming them off. Like the first one is that he's hurting Momo, and the second is that he made his friend hurt Momo, which Gigi would never be able to hurt Momo, and he's taking him away. And then afterwards, you start seeing Okuro say his famous line, "I'm going full throttle," and he starts just going fast, doing a variation of like squats and punching him as he's going up with both fists, like 20 times over and over and over again until eventually he breaks the house. So really symbolic of like Okarun being the one that breaks the evil eye out of his cursed home, the one that like finally gets to see him, gets to play with them. Of course, he gets to finally play with them outside the cursed home, and it's just really nice that Okarun was able to fight off for the first time on his own and actually come out victorious. And then he lands with his final. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention the third mistake you made was pissing me off, and then he just goes like and his powers. He used up his last full throttle move, so but he does take care of the job. So it's really really awesome. Just finally Okarun getting to do something cool, and this time he didn't even have to. He didn't even think about like, oh, this is something Momo's gonna really like that I did, or he just did that because it it was the right thing to do, and it just really remembered how like whenever Momo is always in danger, Okurun's always the one that's like looking out for her, or like whenever something's wrong with Momo, he's seeing it and processing things, and it just also reminded me back of like way back when he was first acquiring these powers, when this kid was trying to make fun of Momo for being easy, and he it pissed him off. So I love how protective Okarun is of Momo. Also, another good thing to note from this episode is that Okarun is actually seemingly getting bulkier, which is just goes to show that the training Seiko kind of told him you have to start doing to make your body prepare to handle the Turbo Granny's powers. It's actually paying off, because now if you compare him to his first shirtless scene from the first season, he was just skinnier and bony, and now you can actually see some depth. Like he's starting to grow abs. His muscles are starting to like look a little bit more ripped, but so he's a little more toned out. So it's really, I love this, how they're slowly showing his own like physical progress, and now it's finally Momo's turn to kind of like hit the screen time with how now the fire, obviously the firefighters come in, and I love how she's trying to get them to like hose down the basement to try to get Okarun out of there as the water lifts up, or to get the earth, and especially to get the earthworm out of there, because they're if they get hit by sunlight, they burn out. So, and I love how she remembers Gigi telling her way back when they were kids, like earthworms only like really need to leave the soil when they can't breathe, and that's usually when the ground soaks up a lot of water. But once they do leave the ground, if they are hit by a lot of sunlight, it's actually dangerous to them, and it kills them. So it's like a suicide. So it's really a double edge sword if they like go up for fresh air. And Momo tries to, after the earthworm kind of gets out, and the house is kind of protecting it from getting burned up by the sun. She has to like figure out a way to make sure it does, and it destroys the whole home with fire truck, and now it's after the earthworm like kind of dries up because of the sun. Now we have the Keto family actually comes back, as they're like they weren't completely digested when the earthworm made them. So now they're there, and they're like another. It seems like this ain't over yet, even though like the major threat of the worm is over. But yeah, the episode ends up in a nice way where like the volcano finally erupts. So it's like it's finally the end of the Kiddo's family hold on this place, as they're the volcano finally erupts, and it's and yeah, now we get to see what happens, and it's definitely going to change the landscape of this town, and it'll definitely put like the people that were helping the Kiddo family turn away from them, as that was one of the main reasons why a lot of the town was actually helping them, like the police and stuff. So interesting, very good episode. I am rating it a 10 out of 10. Dr. Stone, episode 14. So the episode kicks off right where the last one left off, as we have Senku and Sino finally pinpointing where exactly the petrification beam like started, and it was like somewhere in the northern like Amazonian forest. And as per usual, Risui gave his speech about how he wants everything, and that includes the petrification beam secrets. So safe to say that Rusui is gonna try to monopolize that as well. So gotta love capitalist uh, Rusui. Uh, but yeah, they get to talking, and they still have a lot to consider. The fact that moving through the forest is going to be quite difficult, or like how they're going to approach getting there is going to have to depend on how fast they can evade uh, Stanley, because Stanley is right up their tail, and he does have their ship, which is like ironically like probably a better equipped ship than the one they currently have, and doesn't need to stop as much to refuel, or like because they come from the Americas where they have fuel, they don't need it. They can use it more repetitively, and they don't have to make a lot of stuff, which that's one of Senku's current situations where they do have to make a lot of stops and kind of chop up wood and get supplies. All this takes time, and eventually it's going to lead to them having Stanley on their tail, because they at one point they eventually going to be caught up as they're preparing to leave. So yeah, and I like that Stanley is fully aware of this too. Like, yeah, they don't have the resources we do. We have the fuel. We have they literally have to keep making stops. So like eventually we will uh catch up to them, and I love that because of this. Everybody has to put in effort if they want to keep going. Like everybody's just chopping wood. Of course, Taiju is the one that's like doing the absolute most, working the most, as he has like the most stamina, and he is just like a workhorse. He doesn't get tired, which is insane. But because he is still human, like people do, the group is kind of talking like, listen, Senku, we know Taiju has like almost unlimited stamina, but don't you think he should still need to come and eat with us and have a chat with us? And Senku's like, yeah, you know what, it is time. You guys can like take him some food. So as they're taking him food, they come and realize that there's like this whole light of like that says hell, which is lighting up in a kite, and they follow it, and they discover there's a base, and somebody is there, which is probably one of the main focus of this episode, which is Chelsea. She has been living there. She's been trying to she gathered the supplies and made kites so that she can kind of put out a signal that she needs she needs help in rescuing, because she is kind of like deep in the forest, and Suka notices that she's squinting her eyes a lot. So she also has low vision and requires glasses, which now Senku and the rest of the people kind of like, okay, well, we got that, simple and easy. They've already discovered the way to do it. They have the materials to be able to acquire her certain glasses. And funny enough, Chelsea is very uh keen, or she's very connected, as she knows Seno of all people also. And one of the things that Seno does point out is that she is like a genius when it comes to geography, and that she even has like a doctor's in it, and that if there's any way that they could escape Stanley, it would be due to her help. And of course, she realizes that she has a lot of skills that are very valuable to them, and she decides to help out their cause, as they tell her everything about a Y Man and how they're trying to go. They're on this whole journey around the world to get materials so that they can eventually try to fly to the moon. And she's just moved by it a lot, that she doesn't even think twice about joining them. Even though Senno at one point was trying to like get her on his side of everybody, and it's like, yeah, no, I think I'll have much more fun with Senku, because this is more of an adventure. But we do find out how she gets stuck where she is in her current predicament, and she was actually with Senno when everything went down with the petrification beam. And after it all went down, of course, she lost her glasses, but most importantly, she was told to like head a certain way, uh, and because she couldn't read as well, she ended up heading the opposite direction, and that's why she didn't meet up with Seno and the rest of the group that she was at. and and it's just really interesting to how like this one choice that Chelsea made affected how she would eventually play a role in everything. And just, it could have been so much worse had she actually been able to go with Seno, and now Senku and the rest of the people had to rely on like Senku and his knowledge, but not necessarily the knowledge of a professional geographer. But yeah, so at one point they decide, well, we kind of have to give Stanley the slip. We should probably, thanks to her, they've made a realization that they need to go through the forest, and in order to acquire that, they need to acquire rubber, because rubber is essential for making tires, for essentially a lot of things. And with the rubber, that we're planning on making an all-purpose vehicle to go through the forest, which really interesting, really amazing. Just, we're slowly developing higher and higher technology, which is awesome. And Suika kind of like realizes a lot of things while talking with Chelsea, and having her talk with the group, having the group dynamic kind of shift a bit, where Suka is like, wow, she is so much like she is kind of like the whole opposite of me, where she's more upbeat, she's more adventurous, and less less prone to be scared. Where she feels a bit of a threat. Maybe she feels like Chelsea's gonna replace her. And also Chrome kind of notices, well, if you're an adventurer and explorer, you're gonna be my rival, which really interesting. Chrome is kind of like taking tidbits of everybody, like Psycho with science, and now Chelsea kind of is like the whole package of exploring and stuff. So yeah, Chrome's just like a really good all around kind of type of guy, because he does know a lot of things. He just doesn't specifically have an insane strain on one. So he's like a jack of all trades. And now that they're kind of like getting acquainted and everything's happening, uh they realize they have a big issue, that Stanley's using the radar to kind of pinpoint their location, and it's getting very near, and he knows exactly where they are now, and it's gonna just make full throttle towards there. And they come to they start thinking of ways to what they're gonna do now. And one of the things I remember is the kites that Chelsea had, and they started using those as sailing as as sails, and it just makes them speed up a whole lot, which is so much. Even Stanley and their group kind of realized they're going a lot faster than usual, like 10 times faster than, or like 2 times, definitely like 2 times faster than usual. So like some people think they're using a lot of fuel, but then Stanley's like, nah, that wouldn't make sense. And plus, Senku's with them, so he wouldn't want to use up their be wasteful with their fuel and stuff. So Stanley realized, oh, they probably found some sails, which is really smart of them. Uh, and because the winds there are like will propel them a lot better. So the group makes a nice room of separation between them, and it's just so good. Like we have new character finally joining, and we have this dread of potential danger with Stanley just right up behind our tails. It's this season is just so good. I'm so much looking forward to every week, getting to see it, getting to talk about it. Uh, this episode was like a 8 out of 10 for me. The Water Magician, episode 3. So we have Rio and Abel just kind of like going around, trying to see where they're at, and Rio kind of points out that, man, I wish there was more wyverns to fight. He's like, I'm not. They're seemingly like easy for him, and Abel kind of notices, kind of tells him like, listen, you shouldn't one fight more of them off. It's like I feel like we're lucky enough that we fought this many and came out of it alive, and they're usually a lot. They usually travel in a lot more packed, uh, bigger packs. So like it's better to avoid wyverns as much as possible. And they start seeing their first major town, and I just love how Rio and Abel just talk to one another. It's almost like Rio is just really good at getting it, getting a good sense of like how to talk to people, how to engage with people. He's not like the shy type. He's very playful, and you could see how he already feels really comfortable with Abel as how he talks to him, and just how he interacts with him about like if there's any more secrets he's keeping, he should like cover them up now. Like if he actually has sweet tooth, stuff like that. But one of the interesting things as that he finds out in this town that they stay up for like a night is that they have curry, which since he's from uh Earth, he figures, they already have curry in this world. It's like this usually is like kind of uh end of end of story stuff when it comes to isekai. But he just loves that he's eating curry now. Obviously, when he was up in his old like home, he was just hunting, gathering, growing vegetables. It was like he didn't have the equipment to like have rice and curry. It's just really interesting that this already seems like it's very uh has some stuff from his world already implanted in it, which gets brought up later on. And now we have as they're going as they leave town, they start realizing, well, you gotta go to the guild, get a card there, because this will help you from having to keep paying entry fees. And also, if I'm going with you, I can like endorse you, and you could have a higher rank to start off with. Otherwise, you would have been stuck at F. And Abel is gonna be allow him to have a D or E ranked position, which already ups the amount of money he's gonna get during each job, or like the higher paying jobs he'll be able to acquire. So really interesting stuff. Uh, Once we make it to the next town though, where like their essential goal was, like, I think the town was called Loon. Uh, Everybody's like, "Oh, Abel is back," like, and kind of Rio starts noticing, like, "Hey, man, like, you are quite the hot stuff around here," and it's you can start to see like, uh, Rio kind of like thought, "Oh, Abel's not gonna be like that popular," but now that he's realizing he's kind of popular, he's kind of like, "Oh well, I start feeling like Rio is kind of getting lonely as he realizes that a lot of people have actually been waiting for him, and a lot of people actually want to interact with them. So it's just giving less time for those two to keep interacting and keep being buddied. But as he's outside, uh, waiting for Abel to call him back into the guild, he runs into an elf, which the elf kind of like notices right away. Like his outfit and his sword is like, oh, you that's like the Fairy King sword. So this is quite the recognizable feature for elves. So I can only surmise that probably the Fairy King was very close to the elves, or could have been an elf from this, and that's why she knows about it. And she kind of is like, well, I am intrigued now, but she kind of leaves off, and Abel calls back Rio and kind of brings him into the whole situation. Again, everybody starts talking about how it was all thanks to Rio that he was saved, and it's just really nice seeing Abel not exclude Rio and the praise he he is getting. Like he kind of brings him into the conversation, brings him into the group. Abel's very nice person, trying to include Rio into uh his other friend groups. And yeah, so like now we have Rio getting his guild license, and uh, Abel being the one that endorsed him is kind of rare, because I don't. Abel is kind of like a high ranking uh, guild person, and he doesn't always vouch for anybody. So this is quite the rare stuff that Abel vouches for his skill, and they were like, okay, well, we're gonna need proof of strength, so they go and meet the guild master, and they show him off the crystals that they acquire from the wyverns, and the guildmaster's kind of like in shock that they were able to collect all these from wyverns and are able to come back alive, and it's like that's proof enough. And also the endorsement from Abel is good enough, that because Abel kind of vouches for him, so they already kind of have a good impression of Rio. And it's basically no sense that he's going to be like a D rank because of the magic crystals he got, and Abel being able to vouch for him and having seen him in action. So they get to talking with the receptionist, and we find out that there's certain things about the dungeons and how the guild operates things, and how they don't just send in like anybody with no experience to dungeons. They kind of all the people that decide to become adventurers, or decide to join the guild, have to go through courses like a dungeon course, and among other things. So like the I like how this kind of builds up a bit of the world, and how it really has us more grounded, and how they know a lot of shows don't really go into depth of how guilds trained their their new recruitments. And this one seems like, because the dungeons are pretty dangerous, they don't just like allow anybody to go in. In this dungeon course, kind of give newbies like valuable information before heading into it, and risk letting them know the risks and ins and outs of dungeons. So I like that from this show, that from this anime, that you don't really see in a lot of other isekai. People just go and take care of business. But yeah, the Rio and Abel get to talking after their guild visit, and kind of Rio points out, "Oh yeah, I can use. I've been practicing with the sword." And Rio's like, "Oh, wait a second, you can actually wield a sword too." So right off the bat, we have a magician that can pretty much conjure magic without having to do any incantations, and now he's also a swordsman as well. So it's Rio is looking to be like a very powerful person. Even like the guildmaster noticed that for a mage, he has quite the build, which is probably due to all the swordsmanship he's been doing and training he's been doing on physical training he's been doing while he was being self-sufficient. And we get to Rio in his new dorms, and we meet his peers and his roommates, and Abel just seems to kick it off with anybody, even like one of the guys that has a crush on the receptionist, and this new guy that joins in also like Rio is just able to adapt and just get along with everybody, which is really really nice. And I really like that this isn't just like a shy character or like a character that like chooses to be alone. This character is more charismatic, more tries to be included in the conversations, tries to get to know people and is befriending people. Really, I'm really starting to like Rio a lot. The more and more I see him just interact with more characters, see how he processes the world, and on that note, like uh, Rio kind of well, he was in their walks with Abel, kind of starts pointing out that, or like talking to himself about how the curry dungeons and how like the and also like the days and the week, this certain stuff about that he acquired information from lets him know like, oh, I'm not the first one to have been isekai here, be reincarnated here. There was definitely somebody from Japan that was also sent here, and there's a lot of clues to point to that. And also, it could have been maybe the Fairy King. Seems like he could have been from Japan, so it's really interesting. But also now we have Abel, and he's back with his group of knights or his friend group, his core friend group, and yeah, he Abel explains to everybody like how what Rio was doing on their adventures with like conjuring up ice walls in thin air, not having to incantate while producing magic, not needing a wand to do magic, and everybody's like, this is kind of like crazy. This is some stuff that it's not possible, and it's like there's no way. Like I think there's been certain rules in this world where like people think that you have to the magic has to conjure up beside you, and it can be done out of thin air. That especially not if you're nowhere near, and also not as frequent as Rio can obviously do them. So they start comparing them to like a former magician, the Inferno magician, which was able to do a lot of the things Rio can. So this could be another person that got isekai from Japan. Is as That's what I'm thinking, and it's just really nice. Like we get nice world building here, nice character interactions in this episode, and it just makes me wonder like if Rio is not the only person that's isekai there, and or if there's gonna be another person who gets isekai after Rio, because seemingly this world also already had a person or possibly people from Japan before. So really good stuff. Really enjoyed this episode. Rating it a 7 out of 10. New Saga episode 3. So we have Kyle, and he's talking to the Great Spirit, and he just kind of like decides to like skip the tutorial and introduction parts because he already knows who it is. So he kind of just was like, okay, well, we can skip that. You'll find out eventually who I am after I pull out the sword. And so once he pulls out the sword, the Great Spirit realizes, oh, you're actually from another world, or like you have been brought back from the future. Interesting. And I love that one of the things that the Great Spirit tells everybody after they appeared is that he he was testing them to see if like the greed would overcome them, but based on like basically what Kyle did, and based on the fact that no one else aside from their own kind of was after the gold, or like they didn't really show that much greed once they found all the gold, that she was going to allow them to have everything that was in there without sinking them deep in into the pit into the depths of despair. But yeah, they they were they kind of make it out, and Kyle kind of makes sure the spirit doesn't really tell his crew anything about his past, or like his future self. And yeah, so they finally decide to go to town, and they're like, okay, we're gonna stock up on supplies now that we got all this money. And they go to this armor shop, and instantly right off the bat, the spirit recognizes the work of Melenis, which is probably somebody that was around her time period during when they were really building these technologies that are now used today. And it was like, well, she tried to talk to him like she knew him, and Kyle was like, oh, don't worry, she just has like a very wild imagination, or like a very childlike imagination. So this is so Kyle kind of gets this armor that's like really expensive, and he tells everybody, all right, well, everybody, you get whatever you want, whatever you need. I'll pay it forward. So everybody just like kind of picks out their best. Like Lisa kind of gets gauntlets. Uh, Ursa gets bracelets for her magic, and Theron just gets a whatever he needs as well. And of course, we keep seeing Kyle kind of ask a lot of questions about like stones and if they have any, and they do bring out like a certain type of stone called like the Blister Stone, which is going to be useful for their for later on, but it was very expensive. And Kyle's just like, oh well, we'll take all you have and also all your potions. So Kyle and the group just kind of ransacked the place. So I like that this is not like you see that based on Kyle's experiences from his future past. He knows the ins and outs of what he needs. He seems a very reliable and capable leader now. Obviously, due to the fact that he right now he has more experience than he did when he started. And yeah, it's just surprising seeing this random ass people just show up to this well known shop and just like ransack everything, get everything they need, and everybody just kind of goes and does their own thing because they're gonna be moving on after this day, and this gives Kyle an opportunity to talk to the spirit and get some certain questions answered that he wants to ask, and he pretty much asks him about like, is it possible to change the future? And the spirit is just like, well, the future's not set in stone, but like in your case, it's a whole lot different. Where she brings up how there's certain points and certain timelines that are flowing, and that possibly this because the future technically in here hasn't happened. That timeline doesn't yet exist. So this is a completely separate parallel line that Kyle is in. But one of the most interesting parts is that Kyle was brought back with the dragon's heart, but his soul kind of fused with his current self, which technically shouldn't be because it should be like two separate souls, uh, separated. And it's really interesting for me because it just really they dive into like this thing called like fusion spell, which is like a combination of souls in order to enhance magic power. Which in this episode we find out that everybody's magic power is set in stone the moment they're born, but there was like a time period when people were trying this fusion spell or trying to create a more powerful people. They even did some like experiments that were like kind of inhumane with like babies and infants, and it just didn't work out for them. So it's really interesting seeing this because obviously we know the demons are in this world, and that the humans are in constant fear of having to battle them, or they've and we know that Kyle is gonna future eventually 3 years from now is gonna involve the demons invading this place. There's like a lot of history in this anime, which is really interesting, and a lot of lore. Uh, so Kyle wants to ask if what's gonna happen to him in the future, and that's like the interesting part, which is like the Grace was like, well, I don't know. This is like unprecedented, even for my time, or for anybody to really know what's gonna happen to you. So yeah, we have then we have everybody just kind of laying in for the night, trying to gaze upon. And Ursa's like, well, there's this shiny moon. I love to bathe in the moonlight, which interesting enough, maybe it's something like the elves do, where like they replenish mana through looking at the moon. Or we definitely know that their magic enhances once they're looking at the moon. So the moon's already having like a pivotal importance, whereas like the moon has it's almost like in any anime, like the moon is always emphasized as like a magic source, or like a way to increase magic tenfold. And then Ursa remembers, oh shoot, I have to go do the contract with Kyle, which once she gets there, Kyle kind of tries to play it off, and I was like, I'm already tired. Why don't we just call it a night and do it another time? And she's like, nope. Well, this is not. While you don't find a lot of importance in this, I do find importance in this. This is my name. Like, I don't want you to misuse it. The sooner we do it, the better. And once they start doing the contract sealing and stuff, uh, Kyle, after they're finishing the contract ritual, Kyle just goes in and kisses her, and it's like, well, isn't that how we're supposed to seal the deal? And she's like, no, that's usually done after weddings. Which, interesting enough, we know Ursa feels kind of like calm with Kyle around. Like, she doesn't mind that. Well, at least now she doesn't mind that he knows his name, especially now with the contract ritual. But this this is one of the things where she kind of let her guard down a bit, and uh, she felt like Kyle kind of took advantage of that and went for it. Uh, Really interesting stuff. Just burns him to a crisp later with a spell, because obviously with the moonlight and the magic finally being at its peak, she was able to cast a burning spell, and everybody's like noticing on their way to the next town, like, hey Kyle, you kind of smell like you're burning. It's like, this is just an incident, don't worry about it. And Ursa's like, yeah, don't worry about it. But Elise is kind of like there, like looking at him, like, she obviously, I think she notices that there's something going on with Kyle and her, or that she definitely is starting to see through Kyle's lies a bit, because uh, you can only keep fainting that you don't know certain things for so long, or like, it eventually is gonna catch up. I think eventually Kyle's gonna have to come forward and let him know, listen, I'm not the Kyle you know. I actually come from the future. I'm inhabiting my current self, and this is why I'm so strong. And they finally meet. Uh, well, they finally go into a town, and they get to see the princess finally arrive. And it's really interesting because the way it was played out, it almost seemed like the princess was too kind, and it definitely felt to me that she was probably going to be underhanded and do some shady stuff and just put on a show or a facade for the crowd and be a kind-hearted princess. But no, in actuality, that's not why Kyle was looking at her a certain way. It was because we find out that 3 days from where they're at now, she's gonna get attacked and uh get killed by a hydra of sorts. And it's really interesting because Kyle goes into how in the future this was deemed like a plotted assassination, and but eventually it like faded away because there was no like actual like hard proven evidence towards it. But uh the reason this brings the reason why they're there. Kyle wants to use this opportunity that the prince is going to be in dire need of saving to boost up his reputation as a hero, and really set himself into the path of everybody considering him a hero. So now we have Kyle going back to what he said in previous episodes, where he was like, a hero needs money, uh, reputation, and luck. So he is kind of creating his own luck, and kind of creating he knows a situation is going to happen, and because of his memories of the future, he's making well use of that, which he did say he was going to use any means necessary to accomplish the goal to become a hero. So I'm really liking this anime. It's really interesting. I can't wait for next week. But oh yeah, rating it a 7 out of 10 for this week. But that's all the anime I want to talk about today. So if you would be so kind to like, comment, subscribe, hit the noti bell, all that fun stuff. Until next time, bye.